I cheated with a coworker for 48 hours, but my husband found out and took brutal revenge. He secretly recorded me, ruined my career, and made me live with the consequences. I am Mariana. I am 36 years old. I am a visual artist with a stable and well-known career in the world of independent galleries. Lucas, my husband, is 38 years old and works as an IT technician at a digital security company. We have been together for more than a decade. Our marriage has always been stable, with ups and downs like any long-term relationship, but there was something that had been unsettling me for a while, a growing feeling of stagnation. It was not a lack of love, at least not in the romantic sense, but rather a longing for something new, something visceral that did not fit with the life we had built. I knew that what I was about to say could change everything, but I did not want to hold back anymore. That Wednesday night, after a particularly silent day between us, I decided it was time to be honest. I called Lucas to the kitchen table, the same one where we signed the papers to buy our first car, where we chose the names of the cats we adopted. He looked at me strangely, put down his phone, and crossed his arms. Without further ado, I went straight to the point. I love you, but I feel like going out with another person. The sentence came out harsh, without anesthetic, but it was either that or continue pretending. The silence that followed was so tense that I felt sweat run down my ribs, even with the fan on. Before he could say anything, I continued, I do not want to break up with you, much less destroy what we have, but I met someone. Italo. He is also an artist. I met him at a recent exhibition, and there is tension there, a curiosity. I wanted to be able to explore that with your understanding. Lucas did not move for several seconds. He stared at me, as if I had spoken to him in another language. Then, without changing his tone, he said he needed to think. He stood up calmly and went straight to the guest room. No shouting, no fuss. That, for me, was much worse. I did not expect him to be happy, but his coldness surprised me. Lucas has always been calm, but intense. When something truly upsets him, he withdraws, but this silence hurt more than a slap. I stayed there at the table, looking at the still dirty dishes, wondering if I had just broken something that would no longer fit together. In the early morning, I went to the guest room door and thought about knocking. I gave up. He needed time, I told myself, but deep down I was already beginning to feel that the damage was greater than it seemed. In the days before that conversation, I confess, I already had everything planned. I had already arranged to spend a weekend with Italo at a lodge in the mountains, something discreet, far from the big cities. Italo was single. He had that carefree charm of someone who spends the day painting and smoking unfiltered cigarettes. He was the opposite of Lucas, who was methodical, always predictable, always practical. I thought that Lucas might even accept out of love, because he did not want to lose me, but now I was forced to face the real possibility that he would not accept and that this was not just an exception, but the beginning of the end. The next morning, I woke up to a cold bed. Lucas was not by my side. I heard the shower running in the hallway bathroom and assumed he was getting ready for work. When I went down to the kitchen, there was no coffee left. He left without a word. It was consuming me. I spent the day restless, but still with the idea that he just needed space, that he was processing it, that we could still talk before the weekend. But what I did not know was that, while I was wondering if he would accept my proposal, he was already hatching a plan, and it was not to save the marriage. The next day, the conversation still awaited some kind of emotional response, a breakdown, a fight, a request to reconsider. But Lucas simply walked past me with the car keys in his hand and an impassive face. Not a good morning, not a glance. It was as if I were invisible. The door closed behind him with an unsettling softness. It was as if the man I had slept with for more than 10 years had died and been replaced by a cold stone statue. I sat on the sofa for hours, trying to convince myself that he needed time, that there was still room for dialogue. But what was happening was something else. I found out much later that he had not gone to work. He had taken time off for personal reasons, and that same day he began to set the coldest and most calculated trap anyone has ever set for me. Lucas, the person in charge of my laptop's antivirus, began to use all his computer skills to dismantle me from the inside. First, he accessed my emails, and I do not just mean the ones I used for studio or gallery matters. He accessed the old email address I had created in college and used to communicate with Italo without anyone seeing me. I thought that had checked everything. It had not. There were conversations about the planned weekend, the details of the rustic inn, the exchange of clothes, the subtle photos, even the time Italo would pick me up. Lucas did not just read everything, he saved it, printed it, filed it, cataloged it. That same day, he bought 3 sound-activated voice recorders. One was hidden near the living room phone, another in the master bedroom closet, and the third in my car's glove compartment. Dissatisfied, he went to a tech store and bought 2 small GPS trackers with long-lasting batteries. One of them was discreetly attached under my car, the other he was waiting to put in my purse. While I spent the day believing he was just processing my mature proposal to open the relationship, he was tracking me like a private investigator. And not only that, he started making copies of our joint bank statements, reviewed my credit card expenses, took the detailed bill for my cell phone, since the account was in his name. All this with the coldness of someone who does not seek revenge in the heat of the moment, but the methodical destruction of the one who hurt him. I, of course, had no idea. I continued to act as if I were in control of the story. That night he returned and acted the same way, silent, distant, dry. During dinner, he did not even look at me. I brought up the topic of the studio, of the new exhibitions, and he simply nodded without even chewing properly. When I offered to make him tea, he refused with a brusque wave of his hand. That silence was driving me crazy, but even though I felt the tension in the air, I still believed it was just pain, that he needed to process it, as always. I did not know that the absence of words was precisely what allowed him to act without raising suspicion. That night, while he slept in the guest room, I finalized the details with Italo. I set a time, packed my suitcase, put away my new lingerie with the tag still on, and left it hidden at the bottom of the closet. Italo seemed excited, sending me affectionate messages full of promises of freedom and pleasure. I felt strangely empowered, as if I were taking the reins of my life. But in retrospect, it was like dancing on a trap with a false bottom, and the man who built it was there, under the same roof, waiting for the right moment to bring me down forever. I still believed I had a chance to negotiate with Lucas. Maybe in the end he would accept it, maybe he would understand that it was just a passing whim. I would have sworn he still loved me, and maybe he did, but wounded love is a dangerous beast. While I was distracted with plans for the weekend and racy messages, Lucas was redesigning me with the look of someone preparing a funeral, only the coffin was not literal, it was social, emotional, and reputational. I did not know it, but in a few days my life would begin to crumble like a ruined building. On Friday morning, I woke up excited. Italo had confirmed everything. He would pick me up late Saturday morning. The hotel was already paid for. I planned to leave the hair salon early, go home, take a long shower, and get everything ready. I really believed I was in control, as if I had done something transparent just by letting Lucas know beforehand. I thought I was mature for that. While I was worrying about waxing and a manicure, Lucas was in a cold room, sitting in front of a lawyer, listing every detail of my behavior as proof of my formal infidelity. Lucas wasted no time. He presented copies of emails, phone records, and screenshots of messages, and said he would soon receive the recordings. The lawyer was impressed with his level of organization. This sped everything up. Divorces in Mexico are usually slow, especially when they involve division of assets and serious accusations like adultery, but with that amount of evidence and a well-organized case, he was able to open the case that same day silently, without warning. Lucas was deceiving me and preparing the ground for my fall. When I got back from the hair salon late in the afternoon, Lucas was already home. He was sitting on the sofa with his laptop on his lap and his headphones on. I tried to say something silly about my new hair, hoping for at least a glance. Nothing. The dinner I had prepared, some fajitas that he loved, was left cooling on the table. He left, saying he was going to eat out. He did not come back until after 11. He went straight up and did not even take off his shoes. It was not the silence of someone who was hurt, it was the silence of someone who had already decided to exclude you from their life. I fell asleep with the strange feeling that something was moving, but I forced myself to ignore it. On Saturday, he practically disappeared. I got ready, put on my new dress, and grabbed my suitcase hidden at the bottom of the closet. When Italo honked, Lucas did not even appear. It was as if he had evaporated. Maybe he had left just so he would not see me leave. Maybe he had stayed in the room listening to everything the recording said. I felt free, anxious, even excited. It was as if that getaway was a reconnection with myself. I did not know that while I was smiling in the car next to Italo, Lucas had already formalized the divorce petition with a deadline to notify me in a few days. During the weekend, Lucas did not write to me, he did not call me, he did not ask me if I would come back. I began to realize that his absence hurt more than I expected. Italo was fun, but superficial. The conversations lacked depth, the ideas were recycled, and deep down, no matter how much I had allowed myself this experience, something inside me was screaming that I had crossed a line I could not uncross. But I continued with the plan. I tried to convince myself that it was just a break for the marriage, but this break was being used against me, line by line, photo by photo. While I thought Lucas was at home, complaining at most, mulling over his sorrows in silence, he was ahead of me. I later discovered, in the worst possible way, that he had booked the same room that Italo and I would use for the weekend, only one night before. He arrived at the inn like any other guest and, in the early morning, he installed 2 hidden cameras with fiber optic lenses, one pointed at the bed and the other at the closet. He left before dawn, leaving everything ready, clean, and without a trace. Every second of my weekend would be recorded with audio, images, and dates. But he did not stop there. On his way back from the hostel, he stopped by a security store and bought a concentrated pepper extract spray, the kind that security agents use in physical control situations. At home, wearing gloves, he opened my suitcase and found the new lingerie I had hidden so carefully, a set of very expensive black lace, but only to impress Italo. He sprayed the inside of my panties and bra, and then left everything exactly as it was. When I put it on hours later, back at the hostel, I did not understand the immediate burning sensation. I thought it was an allergy, but it was just the beginning. The jokes started on Saturday night. In the middle of a romantic dinner, the waiter arrived with a bouquet of red roses, accompanied by a card. It was the same model that Lucas had given me on our wedding anniversary. I thought it was a coincidence, but the note left me paralyzed, with eternal love from someone who truly knew you. Italo found it funny and tried to make a joke, but I felt a knot in my stomach. It was impossible not to suspect. Still, I tried to carry on with the evening as if nothing had happened. Lucas was already on my mind, and I still had no idea how much was happening. On Sunday morning, a pizza was delivered to our room. It was my favorite flavor, from a pizzeria in my hometown, 2 hours away. The delivery guy gave me my full name and my cell phone number. Italo became suspicious and started asking me if someone was following us. I lied, saying it was just a mistake, that maybe it was a fan of my work, but inside I was trembling. The provocations kept coming, flowers, notes, cryptic messages. Every gesture was a cruel reminder that I was not alone there. Lucas was with us, invisible but present, like a vengeful ghost. By then, my body was already burning from the spray. It felt like it was burning between my legs and on my chest, as if I had been sprayed with pure acid. The itching was unbearable, but the burning was worse, a constant burning, as if my skin were raw. At first, I tried not to show anything, even when the discomfort became unbearable just by walking or sitting. Italo did not seem to notice, or if he did, he pretended to be fine. I said I had a headache, that I needed to rest, that maybe I was allergic to something in the hotel's environment, but he just laughed, saying I was tense and needed to relax. That night he touched me impatiently. My thighs were already swollen, sensitive to the point of throbbing. The fabric of my lingerie felt like a razor blade. When he sat me on his lap, I felt a sharp pain that took my breath away. Still, I forced myself to smile, to pretend. It was the least I could do after everything I had planned. He thought I was feigning charm. He called me temperamental. I tried to push him away discreetly, claiming I was tired and would rather sleep, but he insisted. He pressed me with kisses, with caresses that had once seemed seductive to me, now invasive. I said, "Not now." He heard later and used me anyway. During sex, I bit my lip not to scream, not from pleasure, but from pain. The friction burned me even more, and I felt like I was being torn apart. My breasts were swollen, red, and every touch hurt like a punch. Italo was rough, impatient. With every move he made it was as if my flesh were screaming, and still, he continued. When he finished, he turned to the side as if nothing had happened. I ran to the bathroom, washed my parts with cold water, tried to soothe the burning, but nothing worked. The mirror reflected a red, swollen, and unrecognizable image. I was physically shattered. On Saturday, I woke up even worse. Walking was difficult. I felt a constant, suffocating pain, as if I only had a fever between my legs. I got ready slowly, with calculated gestures, every movement meticulously planned so as not to reveal what was happening. I spent hours feigning sleep, lying under the fan, trying to avoid any of his advances. But Italo, insatiable, did not care. It was as if my discomfort was part of the game. He even told me he found my withdrawn attitude sexy, not knowing that what he called charm was pure suffering. Late in the afternoon, he pushed me against the bathroom wall. He tried to use me without even asking how I was. The pain was so intense that my eyes filled with tears. Still, he did not stop. "Calm down, it will pass," he whispered in my ear, thinking it was psychological tension. I just wanted to scream, to ask for help, to beg him to get off me, but I swallowed everything, even the tears, because deep down I knew it was my fault and it was only the beginning. Shame prevented me from reacting, pride prevented me from telling the truth, and the fear of what I could lose kept me there, motionless, being used. That night I snuck into the bathroom to check my private parts. They were deformed, red, with visible marks of irritation, the skin so sensitive that I could barely stand the touch of toilet paper. I slept on my stomach, naked, trying to alleviate the contact with the sheets. Italo kept trying to call me, pretending to pat my back, but this time I did not insist. I said I was menstruating. He snorted, turned over, and fell asleep. But I did not sleep. I trembled, I cried in silence, and, for the first time, I thought that maybe, deep down, Lucas had known it from the beginning, that this was not bad luck, it was a punishment, and I did not even know what would come next. I no longer felt like I was in control of anything. All the excitement of escaping my routine, of surrendering to something new, had turned into a burning and claustrophobic nightmare. Italo was starting to get impatient and complained about my coldness, and I could not explain it to him without revealing that something was very wrong. With each new delivery or note, I felt as if Lucas were moving the pieces with surgical precision, dismantling every part of my plan. And there I was, trying to smile while my body ached and my mind crumbled. I did not know it yet, but he was just getting started. I returned home on Sunday night, trying to appear normal, even though my body was on fire and my mind was a mess. Italo dropped me off at the door without even getting out of the car. That weekend that I thought would bring light and a new beginning ended in discomfort, silence, and frustration. I went up with my suitcase, entered the dark house, and there was Lucas on the sofa, watching soccer as if the world had not changed. He held the remote control with such calm that I felt even more out of place. "Hello, I am home now," I murmured. He did not answer. He simply adjusted the volume of the television and ignored me completely. In the kitchen, the smell of reheated food in the microwave still hung in the air, a sign that he was managing without me and that it did not bother him at all. I wanted to start a conversation, to tell him that I was tired, that the trip had gone well, but the words would not come out. When I tried to sit next to him on the sofa, he stood up instantly. He looked at me with disgust. It was not anger or pain, it was contempt. He said in a low, firm voice that our bond was broken, that he would not touch me even with gloves, and that, even with sanitary checks, he might not be able to look at me as before. I was paralyzed for a few seconds. I did not expect affection, but that coldness pierced me. Lucas had always been one to solve problems by talking, or at least he tried. Now he did not want to talk or reconcile, he wanted distance. He told me to sleep in the guest room. Our bed is no longer yours, he added without looking me in the eye. I felt lost. I went up the stairs with my suitcase, each step heavier. The feeling that control was slipping away was no longer a hunch, it was an absolute certainty. In the guest room, I threw my suitcase on the bed and looked at myself in the mirror. My eyes were red, my skin was irritated. The bra and panties I was wearing were still burning, even hours later. The first tear fell when I realized I did not even have the courage to take off my clothes and look at myself. I took them off carefully, changed, sat on the edge of the bed, and stared into space. For the first time, I felt real shame, not for the betrayal, but for what I had become. I was no longer a wife or a lover, I was a walking mistake, bruised on the outside and crumbling on the inside. The night was long. I heard Lucas walking around the house. At one point, he locked the bedroom door. That hurt, as if he wanted to make sure I did not even have the chance to get close. And maybe that was exactly it. He did not want to hear me or see me. I was living with a stranger who knew everything and, worse, who had a plan. Deep down, even without knowing what he had done, I felt that this was just the beginning. His look made it clear that he still had aces up his sleeve and that the real punishment was yet to come. On Monday, I woke up early to the sound of the coffee maker. I went to the kitchen and Lucas was there, dressed and ready to leave. He looked at me as if I were a broken piece of furniture. I said, "Good morning." He said, "Whatever." Before leaving, he looked over his shoulder and said, "Do not worry, this will all be over soon." That echoed in my head for the rest of the day. The Lucas I knew was gone, and in his place was a man who knew me from head to toe and who was now using all of that against me. On Tuesday morning, I woke up to the sound of heavy footsteps in the garden. I looked out the window and saw my suitcase in the middle of the lawn. Lucas had left it there, along with 3 black bags with my clothes and my belongings. I got dressed quickly, went out angry, and asked him what he was doing. He, with his phone in his hand, replied in a dry tone, "I just wanted to make sure you had a place to keep your dignity, if you still have any left." Then he called the police and said he wanted a witness for my final departure. When the officers arrived, I felt like a criminal being thrown out of my own life. I tried to argue, to tell him it was humiliating, that we still had to talk, but he just smiled at the corner of his lips and pointed to the sidewalk. "You made your decisions, now you live with them." When the patrol car arrived, some neighbors started peeking out of their windows. I, who had always worried about my appearance, about what they would think of me, was now being dismantled before their prejudiced gazes. I took my things and went to my sister's house, who knew nothing and received me without asking any questions, yet. But Lucas was not finished yet. The next day, I went to work as if nothing had happened. I tried to resume my projects in the studio, pretending that everything was under control. In the mid-afternoon, I received an envelope. Inside were the official divorce papers, accompanied by a notification with the name of the gallery where I exhibit. When I opened the email from the curator, I got a surprise. All the recordings from the weekend had been sent to the institution's ethics committee. My name was tarnished. They canceled my participation in 2 exhibitions and suspended my representation contract for incompatible conduct. It got worse, much worse. Lucas did not just want to end my marriage. He wanted to erase my professional identity. And he succeeded. Some brands I had collaborations with also canceled their agreements. I became a toxic figure in the art circuit I had fought so hard to belong to. In a matter of 48 hours, I lost almost everything I had built in 10 years. People looked at me with pity or contempt. No one wanted to be associated with a woman who appeared half-naked in hotel videos with a married man. Because yes, I discovered that Italo was not as free as he said. Lucas found his wife, Renata, a pharmacist and mother of 2. He sent her all the evidence, images, audio, screenshots of conversations, times, and places. Renata was devastated and also began to act. She filed for separation and, to my surprise, decided to sue me for moral damages, alleging invasion of family and emotional integrity. That was like the final nail in the coffin. Now, in addition to the social humiliation and the destruction of my marriage, I was also facing a lawsuit from a wounded woman who had never done me any harm. Life became an uncontrolled fire. My social media was filled with harsh comments, my followers dropped, and mutual friends disappeared. Even people I considered trustworthy began to avoid me. And Lucas watched it all from a distance, cold as always. He did not post anything, he did not make a fuss, but he made sure to always appear with his phone in his hand, making it clear to me that if I tried to deny it or play the victim, he would have enough evidence to bury me even further. It was as if he had become the silent executioner of my downfall. A few days later, between desperation and an attempt at redemption, I returned to the house where I had lived with Lucas for more than 10 years. I wanted to talk, I wanted to try, even if it was out of pride, to show that there was still something left between us. I knocked on the door with my heart in my throat. He opened it. He did not smile. He looked at me as if I were a lost letter. He said I had 5 minutes. I went in and sat in the kitchen chair, the same one where he had proposed to me years ago. Now the atmosphere there was like that of a courtroom. I apologized. I said I was sorry, that I had gotten lost in the middle of it all. Lucas crossed his arms, leaning against the sink. He listened to me in silence. When I finished, he responded with a calm that broke me more than any scream. He said he trusted me enough to imagine a future together until the end of his life, that he would have died by my side if it had been necessary, but now, after what I had done, he preferred to live alone. He would rather face old age with a puppy and a game of digital chess than to share a bed with me again. Every word he said was an open wound, and I had no right to ask him for a bandage. Then he took a small black box out of his pocket. He opened it, and inside were our rings. The wedding ring deformed, crushed by the precise blows of a hammer, the engagement ring intact, but with its shine dulled by time. He said the engagement ring belonged to his mother, and he wanted it back. He handed me the other one, saying, "You can sell the gold, maybe you can buy some common sense." The sentence tore me apart. I felt shame, guilt, and anger at myself, all the emotions I had tried to avoid from the beginning of this story. He closed the box and held out his hand to me, not to shake my hand, but as if he were returning forgotten trash. I asked him for one last chance. I tried to justify myself. I said that a tallow meant nothing, that I had acted on impulse, that I felt invisible. Lucas interrupted me with a dry laugh. He said that those who feel invisible seek therapy, not a motel in the mountains with a married man. That impulse is not an excuse, it is a choice. That every action has a consequence, and that mine was being collected with interest. He did not raise his voice a single time, and that made it even worse because he was not angry. He was decided, irreversibly decided. He got up, grabbed my bag from the back of the chair, and put it in my hands. He opened the door and waited for me to leave. I kept begging, crying, asking him if he could ever forgive me. And he only replied, "What you broke was not mine, it was ours. And you threw it on the ground. Now I am sorry, but I have things to rebuild and none of them include you." I walked to the car feeling that my existence had been reduced to meters, as if I were a figure, a mistake, a walking warning to all other women who think they can play with fire without getting burned. When I got in the car, he waited for me to close the door. Then, calmly, he closed the gate, turned his back on me, and disappeared inside the house. He did not slam the door, he did not look back at me, but the sound of the lock turning left a deeper mark on me than any insult. It was the sound of the end, the final period. I left there expelled, ashamed, shattered by myself, and with the bitter certainty that the man who once loved me with everything now only wanted distance. And I do not blame him. Today I am writing this not to try to clear my name, it would be useless, but as a kind of outburst, a record for myself, perhaps to remind me that decisions have a price and that sometimes this price is permanent. I lost my marriage, my home, my space in the art world, contracts, respect. But what shatters me the most is knowing that I destroyed the only place where I felt safe, the heart of someone who truly loved me. Lucas offered me years of silent loyalty, affection, and support, and I paid with doubts, betrayal, and cowardice. Now I am just the echo of a version of myself that no longer exists. He never contacted me again. Not a single message, not a single hint. The last time I heard his voice was when, on impulse, I tried to call him. He answered and simply said, "You chose someone on impulse and destroyed our history. Now accept it." And he hung up. That hurt more than any insult. It was as if I had been shot, without screams, without blood, just the cold certainty that everything was over. I learned from mutual friends that he had calmed down, that he had even started dating a coworker, an administrative assistant named Carla. I am happy for him, really. Meanwhile, my life has become a minefield. The gallery that represented me definitively terminated the contract, the others simply disappeared. Renata's lawsuit is still ongoing and I will probably lose. Some exhibitions that still accepted me were cancelled at the last minute for ethical reasons. I have become persona non grata in the local art scene. Colleagues who used to flatter me for my brushstrokes now avoid me as if I had the plague. I never imagined that a decision based on feeling alive would make me invisible in the worst possible sense. My family avoids talking about it. My mother only calls me to ask if I am eating. My brothers say they do not take sides, but the visits have stopped. Even my godson has unfollowed me. I live in a kind of emotional quarantine where every day is a reminder of what I did, where every free minute becomes a spiral of regret. When I look in the mirror, I see a woman who is marked, not physically, but inside, for having ruined a beautiful story for something that barely lasted 2 days, for having exchanged the real for the illusory, and for having believed I was smart for it. Italo disappeared, as expected. His wife, Renata, also took care of destroying him, and I do not blame her. After the scandal, he deleted all his social media. He never contacted me again and, honestly, I hope he does not because there is nothing left. No desire, no affection, only shame and a certain disgust for myself. Today I know that I was just a distraction in the midst of his chaos and that he was a bomb that I myself accepted. You cannot complain about the damage when you press the self-destruct button with such enthusiasm. And as if all this were not enough, I carry it to this day, physical after-effects of that weekend. The reaction I had to the spray, that unbearable burning, the swelling, the pain, left real marks on my body. I have been to several gynecologists, dermatologists, and even immunologists, and they all say there is nothing obvious, but every time I have tried to have traditional intimate relations with another man since then, the same hell has begun. Redness, burning, inflammation. It is as if my body registers it as a trauma. Therefore, I avoid it as much as I can. On the rare occasions when I have sex with someone, I try to prolong oral sex as long as possible just so I do not have to last much longer, because the touch, even the slight friction, everything reminds me of that pain, that punishment, that choice. Today, even my own body seems to want to punish me for who I was. If I could go back, of course I would, but there is no way to undo these kinds of mistakes. And as much as I regret it, I know there are things that cannot be fixed. Lucas is not coming back, my career is not coming back, my peace, maybe someday, but not yet. And that is why I leave this story here. Perhaps for someone to understand that betrayal is not just an escape route, it is an earthquake, and when you are the epicenter, there is no point in running from the rubble. They follow you every day. I was an unfaithful wife, and today I pay for it with the only currency I have left: loneliness, pain, and suffering.